نام خداوند جان و خرد که از این برتر اندیشه و نگذرد. به نام خداوند جان و خرد که از این برتر اندیشه و نگذرد. به نام خداوند جان و خرد که از این برتر.
The United Nations take action against Iran's president, President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, said this week that Israel is on the road to being eliminated. In the past, he's called for Israel to be wiped off the map. His latest outburst came just days after Iran announced it had produced weapons-grade nuclear material. Well, one man who'd like to see the back of President Ahmadinejad is the son of the Shah of Iran, the former ruler of the country. He joins us now live from Washington. Welcome to you, Prince Reza. I suppose you also reflect on the fact that it proved relatively easy to remove the president of Iraq, but certainly most pundits believe it was much harder to supplant the president of Iran.
Well, first of all, regime change in Iran should come as a result of the actions and free will of the Iranian people. And as such, we are all welcoming the idea of regime change and any kind of support that the international community can bring to the forces that are fighting for freedom and the establishment of a secular democracy in Iran to replace the current theocracy would be welcome. However, I don't believe that advocating regime change as a means of foreign policy of a foreign nation would be the appropriate language. And furthermore, I think that if change is to come to Iran, it should certainly be not through scenarios that involve violence, and certainly not as a result of any kind of military intervention.
There were many people in Washington, weren't there, who felt that the reformers would eventually get the upper hand in Iran, and eventually people would get tired of the mullahs. They want to see Western-style democracy, they want to see Western-style media, but in the latest elections, the last election last year, we saw the conservatives getting.
But the reform movement was doomed to fail, not because reformists were not trying to bring about change, but because the regime would not allow it to happen. It was against its nature. We are talking about a system in which its constitution specifically does not allow for elected members of parliament to legislate. They can simply propose a law that can be easily vetoed by unelected leaders, and today in Iran, Mr. Khamenei, the supreme leader, basically has the final word. Therefore, it was just impossible to think that such kind of a change can occur within the system. Therefore, we have to go beyond this regime if we wanted to really reinstate a system in which the people will be able to participate and determine their own future. Iran cannot get back on course of progress and modernity and opportunities for all and human rights and what have you, as long as this theocracy exists. And the world, unfortunately, for a while was distracted. I think now, however, the time has come for the world to finally decide that outside of endless negotiations that has not produced anything and has only allowed the regime to buy time, and by not thinking in terms of military confrontation, the best investment really to bring an end to this crisis is to help freedom-seeking Iranians, and by that I mean support for dissidents both at home and abroad, and to reckon with the Iranian people who, let me remind the free world, are the first and natural allies of the free world, and that have been hostage to this regime for far too long.
Do you think it was a mistake then, Prince Reza, to have gone into Iraq, to have removed ostensibly a secular leader who could have been a friend to the West in some respects, and effectively the West could then have kept its powder dry to deal with the real threat, namely a nuclear-armed Iran?
Ever since this regime has taken over in my country, the whole world has seen stability and security falter in exchange for radicalism and extremism that unfortunately the clerical regime in Tehran has been behind all along. It is true that most of the world has forgotten that the reason we had Saddam Hussein was because of Iran in the first place, and that he did in fact create some kind of a shield to prevent the Islamic regime to further propagate its tentacles in the region. However, that being said, certainly Saddam was no angel, but the question that behooves all of us to focus on is, who is the main culprit in that region? You talk to anybody in our region, from heads of states to others, they will tell you, whether officially or off the record, that Iran is the only threat. And when I say Iran, I don't mean the people or the nation, it's the regime, it's the Ahmadinejads of this world who are the real threat.
Do you buy what the president says, that Iran has to go nuclear, or do you subscribe to the view that actually they've got all the cheap gas and oil they could ever need, and that their only objective is to enrich uranium for military purposes?
Look, the only reason this regime needs to go nuclear in the sense of acquiring weapons of mass destruction is that it is the best way to guarantee its sustenance and institutionalization in the region and sort of blackmail the world into backing off. Let's understand one thing. Like in any totalitarian system, and this regime is one of them, it needs to expand in order to survive. It is trying to do it by fomenting violence and instability. It is financing and supplying its surrogates in the region, groups such as Hamas or Hezbollah or many other radicals. They're trying to destabilize the region by supporting a variety of groups such as Shiites in the eastern provinces of Saudi Arabia, and ultimately achieve what the Soviets could not. That means encircling the Persian Gulf and basically bringing the West as we know it to its knees, because as you know, the factor of oil and the free flow of it from the Middle East to the outside world is vital to the world economies. The regime knows that. It has found the Achilles heel of the West. It is not backing up, and I don't think we should believe that for a second. They're bluffing. Now, I want to separate the question of weapons of mass destruction and nuclear threat that this regime could certainly be with the right for a nation to acquire nuclear technology. And let me remind everyone that Iran had that right before the revolution. As a matter of fact, free nations in the West, such as France, the United States, Germany, were competing as to who would be selling Iran nuclear technology. And had it not been for the revolution, Iran by now would have had over 30 functioning nuclear power plants. And I don't mean Chernobyl technology, I mean, you know, the way we see it in the outside world. Do we need to preserve oil and fossil fuel from an environmental standpoint in terms of cost? Certainly these were issues that were contemplated back then, and I don't see a reason why Iran would not have had, to some degree, nuclear power plant in order to supply itself with energy. Having said that, the reason why the world today is distrusting the regime is because indeed its track record and its behavior leads everyone to not trust it, and that's where the core of the problem is. This regime and in its nature cannot be trusted.
Okay, Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah of Iran. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Dedicated to Pahlavi dynasty, the dynasty that brought justice and business ethic to Iran. Long live, happily live, healthily. Pahlavi and Diva dynasty.